I had been awake for almost 20 hours when I stepped out of Portland General Hospital and into the cold quiet of the parking structure. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, and the concrete still smelled faintly of disinfectant and rain. My legs felt heavy the way they always did after a 12-hour night shift, but all I wanted was to get into my Lexus RX, blast the heater, and go home to sleep. I walked toward the row where I always parked, rubbing the stiffness from the back of my neck, thinking about nothing but my pillow. Then I stopped. The space was empty. Not just empty as in maybe I misremembered the number of the row, but empty as in wrong. Wrong in my bones. Wrong in a way that made my stomach pitch and my pulse jump into my throat. My Lexus was gone. My car. My one luxury after 10 years of grinding through school and shifts and saving every spare dollar. I blinked, stepped back, checked the pole number, walked in a circle as if the SUV might suddenly return. It did not. I felt something cold slip through my chest. I pulled out my phone, hands trembling from exhaustion, and something sharper. I called my mother because she had the spare key locked in the safe at their house. When she answered, her voice was bright in a way that instantly made me suspicious. "Mom, my car is gone. It is not in the lot." "Did you take the spare key?" "Did Dad? Did Noah?" There was a pause, too casual, too long. "Ava, honey, relax. We gave it to Noah. He needs it more. He has a job interview today." For a moment, I could not breathe. "You... what?" My voice cracked. "You gave my car to Noah. You took my car without asking. You think he needs it more than I do, Mom. He has crashed 3 cars. I need my car for work." My mother's voice cooled into that familiar, condescending calm. "Do not be dramatic. He is your brother. He needs reliable transportation." I hung up before I said something I could never take back. My breath came in short, panicked bursts. I could not think of anything except getting to that house. I called a rideshare, shaking so hard I dropped my phone twice. The 20-minute drive felt like an hour. My heart hammered against my ribs. Every worst-case scenario flashed through my mind. Noah speeding, Noah crashing, Noah drinking, my Lexus in pieces. By the time the car pulled up to my parents' driveway, my fear had crystallized into something solid and furious. Their lights were on, the garage was open, and there it was, my Lexus, parked in the driveway like it belonged to someone else. I got out before the driver even stopped fully. My knees nearly buckled from exhaustion and rage, but I forced myself up the walkway. Noah walked out of the garage holding the keys, spinning them on his finger with a smirk. He was 26, but still moved like a teenage boy who never heard the word no. "Hey, sis, Mom said you would be uptight about this." I stared at him. "Give me my keys. Now." He shrugged. "It is not your car anymore." "Mom said I could have it." I pulled out my phone. My voice was shaking but steady with purpose. "I am calling 911. This is theft." Before I could dial, a hand slammed down on my wrist. My father, Frank Morgan, 62, built like a retired mechanic who still spent his weekends lifting engines and drinking cheap beer. His face twisted red with fury I recognized from childhood. "That car is his now," he roared so loud the windows shook. "You do not deserve anything." He yanked the phone from my hand so hard, my shoulder jerked. "Dad, stop," Noah said, but without conviction. My mother stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching like it was a show she had already seen. I reached for my phone. He stepped toward me. Something in his face changed, and I knew what was coming a fraction of a second before it happened. His fist connected with the side of my head with a force that stunned me. A white flash swallowed my vision. My skull hit the wooden shoe cabinet behind me. Pain exploded across my face and ear. A warm rush of blood slid down my neck into my collar. My vision wavered, doubled blurred. I tried to stand, my knees folded. I hit the tile floor hard. Mom's voice drifted through the ringing in my ears. "Lock the door. She stays out until she learns respect." I heard the deadbolt click. It echoed through my skull. Rain began to fall slow at first, then harder, tapping against the porch roof. I crawled toward the steps, fingertips numb, head throbbing, the world tilting. I was outside, in the cold, in the rain, and no one inside cared. I slid down the porch step and onto the wet driveway. The concrete felt icy against my cheek. My fingers trembled uncontrollably. Someone! Help! The word barely escaped my lips. The rain soaked my hair, my scrubs my skin. My breath hitched, my eyes fluttered. Then everything went black. Cold was the first thing I felt, not pain, not fear, just cold biting and merciless seeping into my bones the way winter storms seep under old doors. It wrapped around me like a second skin, heavy and numbing, pulling me back toward consciousness. I could not tell how long I had been lying there on the driveway, rain pouring over me in steady sheets. But when my eyes cracked open, the sky above was a blurry gray swirl. My lashes were wet, stuck together. My breath came in shallow, uneven gasps. For several seconds, I did not know where I was or why my head felt as if someone had swung a metal pipe through it. The world tilted, then refocused just enough for me to see the edge of the porch above me, the wooden railing dripping with rainwater, the faint glow of the porch light that someone inside had deliberately left on. The deadbolt was still locked. That sound replayed inside my skull like an echo from a nightmare. Then memory surged back, jagged and sharp, and I flinched. The blow, my father's fist, the impact against the cabinet, my mother's voice telling him to lock the door, Noah spinning my keys with that smug grin, my Lexus sitting in the driveway claimed like some prize he had earned. The collision of images made my stomach twist and I tasted metal in my mouth. I tried to push myself up, but my left arm buckled. A wave of dizziness rolled over me so violently that I slumped sideways, cheek pressing into the wet pavement again. The rain hit my face in pinprick bursts, cold enough to sting. There was a constant ringing in my ears, high-pitched and relentless, drowning out almost everything else. My throat tightened and I swallowed hard, but the motion sent a lightning bolt of pain through the side of my skull. I reached up to touch the source and felt something warm and slick. Blood. It mixed with the rain and ran down my fingers in thin red streams. Panic shot through my chest, sharp and instinctive. I tried to speak, to yell, to cry out for help, but all that came out was a broken rasp of air. My tongue felt thick, my jaw tight. I could not even form a full word. My heart hammered faster, each beat thudding painfully against my ribs, and I forced myself to take a breath, even though my lungs felt shaky and unsteady. You are alive. You are conscious. You need to move. But my body was not listening. My legs felt disconnected from me, numb from cold and the shock that still held me like invisible restraints. Rain dripped into my ear and down my neck, making me shiver uncontrollably. A fresh wave of nausea hit, and I gagged silently, pressing my forehead to the pavement as the world blurred again. I do not know how long I lay there trapped between consciousness and darkness, but eventually the sound of footsteps cut through the ringing. Slow, careful footsteps. A door creaked open somewhere nearby. A voice followed, faint at first, then growing clearer. "Ava, honey, is that you?" The voice belonged to Mrs. Carmichael, the elderly woman who lived 3 houses down. She always walked her dog at strange hours and always seemed to notice everything the neighborhood tried to hide. I tried to lift my head, but a jolt of agony shot down my spine. She gasped when she saw me sprawled on the driveway. "Oh my God! Oh, sweetheart, what happened?" Her shoes splashed through the puddles as she hurried to kneel beside me. Her hands hovered over me, trembling. "Ava, can you hear me?" "Blink if you can hear me." I managed a slow blink, tears mixing with the rain. Her breath hitched. She looked toward my parents' house, eyes narrowing when she saw the locked door. She whispered something under her breath that sounded like outrage and heartbreak rolled together. Then she pulled her phone out with shaking fingers. "I am calling 911. Stay with me, sweetheart. Do not move." Rain continued to hammer against my skin as she relayed my condition to the dispatcher. Head trauma, bleeding, disoriented, possibly unconscious earlier. She kept one hand hovering near my shoulder, not quite touching, as if afraid she might hurt me more. When she ended the call, she leaned down so her face was close to mine. Ava, who did this to you?" I tried again to speak, but the words tangled in my mouth. My throat burned from the effort. Finally, barely above a whisper, I managed, "My car stolen." "Dad, hit me!" Her eyes widened in horror. She looked back toward my parents' house again, jaw clenching. "I swear," she muttered almost to herself, those people should be ashamed." The wail of sirens approached in the distance, faint, but growing louder, and relief flooded me so fast my vision flickered. Help was coming. Finally! Mrs. Carmichael stayed beside me, shielding my face from the rain, with her coat murmuring soft assurances. "You are safe now. You are not alone. Hold on." Lights flashed across the street as the ambulance pulled up, splashing water as it stopped. 2 EMTs rushed out, kneeling beside me, asking questions in calm, controlled voices. "Can you hear us, Ava? Do you know where you are? Do you know what day it is?" I answered as best I could, fragmented words forced through shaking lips. One EMT gently tilted my head to examine the wound, while the other checked my pulse and blood pressure. He exchanged a glance with his partner. "Possible concussion. Get her stabilized." When they lifted me onto the stretcher, the shift in movement made the edges of my vision go white again. I groaned, but one EMT squeezed my hand. "You are okay, Ava. We've got you." As they loaded me into the ambulance, I saw Mrs. Carmichael standing in the rain, clutching her phone, her face twisted with worry and fury. She waved at me with a shaky hand. "You are doing the right thing, Ava. Do not let them hurt you again." Inside the ambulance, the EMT placed a blanket over me and adjusted an oxygen tube near my nose. The warmth made the tears come. I cried without sound, just shaking breaths and leaking eyes, overwhelmed by everything all at once. The betrayal, the violence, the cold, the knowledge that my own parents left me there like trash. The EMT asked gently, "Do you know who hurt you, Ava?" I closed my eyes and whispered, "My father. And I am pressing charges for everything." The bright lights of the emergency room felt like knives slicing through my skull as the EMTs rolled me through the automatic doors. Everything inside was too loud, too sharp, too fast. The beeping monitors, the echo of footsteps on the tile floors, the chatter of nurses exchanging updates, all of it blended into a chaotic hum that pressed against my temples. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to block out the sensory overload, but the motion only made the throbbing in my head intensify. The gurney bumped slightly as they turned a corner, and I let out a soft groan. A nurse leaned over me, her dark hair pulled into a tight bun, her expression a practiced blend of calm and concern. "Ava, my name is Jordan. You are safe. We are taking you straight to imaging. Can you tell me your pain level?" 1 to 10. I swallowed against the dryness in my throat. 9, maybe. She nodded sympathetically. "Concussion protocol. Let's get her scanned." The ceiling tiles drifted past in a blur as they wheeled me to radiology. I felt detached from everything, as though I were floating slightly above my own body, watching someone else's life unfold. When the CT scanner enveloped my head, the cold plastic cradling my skull sent a shiver through me. It clicked and buzzed, each mechanical sound vibrating through the tender spot near my temple where my father's fist had struck. The technician spoke softly through the intercom. "Hold still. You're doing great." But inside my mind, everything was spiraling. Images collided in a frantic loop: Noah's smug grin, my mother's cold eyes, my father's face twisted with rage. The rain, the locked door, the driveway. Each memory hit with the force of a physical blow. After what felt like forever, the scan was done. They took me back to a curtained exam bay where the lights were dimmer. Jordan and another nurse gently cleaned the cut on my head. The antiseptic burned, but at least the stinging felt real grounding. A doctor entered moments later, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes and a voice that felt strangely reassuring. "Ava." "I am Dr. Patel. I have reviewed your scan. You have a mild concussion, a contusion near your left temple, and a laceration that will require a few sutures. No skull fracture, no brain bleed. That is very good news." Relief loosened something tight inside my chest. But the relief came with a wave of shame so sudden I felt my face heat. How had I ended up here again in a hospital bed, bruised and hurting because of the people who were supposed to love me? Dr. Patel studied my expression with a knowing look. Ava, the nurses mentioned you were found outside in the rain. They said you told them someone hurt you. My throat tightened. Yes, my dad. She inhaled slowly, nodding once, as if this confirmed something she had suspected the moment she saw me. I see. I am required to notify our social worker. She will be here shortly. For now, let us take care of your wound. She numbed the area around the cut and began stitching. Each pull of the thread tugged at my skin, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the twisting grief inside me. A soft knock sounded and a curtain swished open. A woman stepped in holding a slim tablet. She wore a badge identifying her as a hospital social worker. Her warm brown eyes softened when she saw my swollen cheek and the dried blood along my neck. Ava, my name is Angela. I just want to talk to you for a few minutes. Is that all right? I nodded because I did not trust my voice. She pulled up a chair, sitting close enough that I could see tiny freckles across her nose. I know you are overwhelmed, but I need to ask you something very important. Do you feel safe returning to your parents' home? The question hit harder than expected. My breath caught, and suddenly tears pooled in my eyes again. I do not have a home there anymore. Angela gave a solemn nod, typing something into her tablet. Thank you for telling me that. You did the right thing, Ava. No one deserves to be harmed by family. Before she could continue, another presence stepped into the curtained area. A uniformed police officer, mid-30s, calm posture, steady eyes. She introduced herself as Officer Hayes. Ms. Morgan, I need to take an official statement about the assault and the reported vehicle theft. Are you able to talk now? I wiped my eyes with the back of my hand and forced myself upright as much as the dizziness allowed. Yes, I can talk. She pulled out a small recorder and set it on the table next to the bed. Please describe exactly what happened tonight from the moment you discovered your vehicle missing. I repeated everything. The empty parking space after work, the phone call with my mother, the ride share to my parents' home, seeing Noah with my keys, my father yelling, the punch, the locked door, crawling out into the rain, blacking out. Officer Hayes asked follow-up questions, and I answered them one by one, even when my voice shook, even when my stomach twisted. When she finally stopped the recorder, she leaned forward slightly. Ava, we take this very seriously. This is assault. This is motor vehicle theft. Your brother is legally liable for possession of stolen property. We will recover the vehicle. We will move forward with charges. For the first time all night, a small, fragile spark of relief flickered inside me. Someone believed me. Someone was on my side. Dr. Patel returned with discharge papers and instructions for concussion monitoring. Angela handed me a card with hotline numbers and a place to stay if I needed to avoid my parents' home. Officer Hayes added her direct line. You are not alone in this, Ava. Call if you need anything. As they all stepped away, the curtain closed softly behind them, and I lay there staring at the dim ceiling lights. My body felt bruised and exhausted, but for the first time since the blow, my heart felt something almost like strength. The people who hurt me might share my blood, but tonight the people protecting me were strangers. And that meant something big, something life-changing. The hospital discharged me just after sunrise when the sky outside had shifted from bruised gray to a pale, washed-out blue that matched the ache beneath my skin. Lily picked me up at the ER entrance, her expression tight with worry as she helped me settle into the passenger seat. I could barely keep my eyes open, the concussion making everything feel slow, heavy, unreal. But even through the fog, I kept repeating the question that gnawed at my ribs like a trapped animal. Where is my car? Where is Noah? What are the police doing now? Lily placed a gentle hand on my arm. Ava, breathe. They are working on it. You told them everything. They will track him down. I tried to nod, but movement sent a wave of pain through my skull. Once we reached her apartment and she helped me onto her couch with pillows propped behind me, she brought water and dimmed the lights. I closed my eyes for a few minutes, but the images kept replaying. Noah swinging my keys, my father's fist, my mother's cold voice, the click of the deadbolt. I could not stay still. My nerves felt electrified with dread and anticipation. I kept glancing at my phone even though I doubted the police would call this early. Except they did. Less than an hour after Lily tucked a blanket around me, my phone buzzed against my hip. Unknown number. My stomach clenched. I answered with a shaking breath. "Hello, Ms. Morgan. This is Officer Hayes. We have an update regarding your vehicle." I sat up too fast and the room tilted, forcing me to grip the edge of the couch. "Did you find it? Did you find Noah?" Her voice remained measured but firm, the tone of someone delivering a blend of justice and reassurance. "Yes. Traffic cameras picked up the Lexus heading east on Burnside just 20 minutes ago. A patrol unit initiated a stop. Your brother was driving." My pulse kicked into overdrive. "Was he arrested?" Officer Hayes continued in the same steady cadence. "He was detained without incident. However, when questioned, he claimed your mother told him the car belonged to him. He insisted he believed it was being given to him legitimately." I let out a humorless laugh that cracked in the middle. Of course he did. Of course he would hide behind them. Did the officers believe him? Ignorance is not a defense in cases of motor vehicle theft. He was in possession of stolen property. The vehicle has been towed to the impound lot for processing. I wanted to feel triumphant. I wanted it to feel like justice. But all I felt was an avalanche of mixed emotions crushing my chest. Shame, anger, disbelief, a bitterness so deep it tasted metallic. I could not stop the images of Noah's easy smile, how he had always been given everything without lifting a finger, how every mistake he made was excused, minimized, smoothed over by our parents. And now, he was sitting in the back of a police car telling them he did nothing wrong. My voice trembled. "What about my father?" Hayes paused. Her next words carried a careful gravity. "An officer will be dispatched to speak with him once the initial report from the hospital is filed." "You did the right thing coming forward. I do not feel like it." She spoke more gently now. "You were assaulted. You were injured. You were left outside. None of that is your fault." I swallowed hard, fighting the trembling in my hands. "Thank you. Please keep me updated." "I will. And Ava. You are not alone in this." When the call ended, Lily sat beside me, slowly studying my face. "What did they say?" "They found the car. They arrested Noah." She exhaled sharply, shaking her head. "Good. It is about damn time someone held him accountable." I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt hollow, like someone had carved out the center of me and replaced it with fog and shaking bones. Noah in handcuffs. Noah blaming everyone but himself. Noah still protected by the story he believed my parents would continue feeding him. Hours passed in a blur. I drifted in and out of sleep, waking each time with my heart racing, as if expecting to find myself back on the driveway in the rain. Each time, Lily brought tea or adjusted the blinds to keep the room dim. I was grateful but restless. I kept checking my phone, checking the window, checking the front door. Late that afternoon, my phone rang again. This time, the caller ID showed Portland Police Bureau. I answered immediately. "Ms. Morgan, this is Officer Bennett from the same unit as Officer Hayes. I am calling to confirm that your brother has been booked. He is being charged with possession of stolen property and unauthorized use of a motor vehicle." Hearing it again, worded plainly, stung in a different way. My brother, my flesh and blood, charged with a crime against me. I forced myself to breathe through the trembling in my voice. "Did he say anything?" Bennett hesitated. His statements were consistent. "He claims he believed it was his car. He says he did not know you were the registered owner." That kicked something inside me, something sharp. "He lives in the same house. The registration is in my name. I paid for every oil change, every service appointment. He knew. He knew!" I could hear my voice fraying with disbelief. Bennett spoke with a kind of quiet empathy. "That is why he was arrested, Ms. Morgan. Whether he believed it or not does not matter. What matters is the fact. The vehicle was yours, and he had no permission." I pressed a hand to my forehead, trying to steady myself. "Thank you. I appreciate you calling." Before hanging up, he added one more thing. "Your father attempted to intervene during the arrest. He shouted at the officers claiming you were lying, but we reminded him that interfering would result in charges." I felt my stomach twist. Of course he did. Of course he tried to shield Noah from consequences while blaming me. Again, always the same script. After the call, I sat in silence for several moments until the weight of everything hit me all at once. A choked sound escaped my throat before I could stop it. Lily moved closer, wrapping an arm around me. Ava, it is okay to feel everything. You have been carrying this alone for a long time. Her voice broke something loose inside me. I covered my mouth with both hands as silent sobs shook through me. Not loud, just trembling, exhausted, raw, the kind of crying that leaks out after a lifetime of trying to hold everything together for everyone else. Through the tears, one truth settled in like a stone. Someone finally saw what had been happening in my family for years. Someone finally called it what it was. Not a misunderstanding, not sibling drama, not stress, not attitude, crime, abuse, theft, violence. And for the first time in my life, the world outside my family was responding, taking action. There would be no covering this up, no smoothing it over, no pretending it had not happened. The beginning of accountability had arrived, and nothing in my life would ever be the same again. The backlash began sooner than I expected, spreading through my phone like a wildfire the moment Noah's arrest hit the internal family grapevine. I had barely managed to drink a few sips of tea when the first call came in. It was my Aunt Joan, my mother's older sister, whose voice usually carried the syrupy sweetness of forced politeness. Today, it was icy and soaked in accusation. Ava, how dare you have your brother arrested? Her voice was sharp enough to cut through the lingering fog of my concussion. I pressed the phone to my ear slowly, bracing myself as Lily looked over from the kitchen watching with concern. Aunt Joan, I started, but she drowned me out immediately. He is a good boy, Ava. He is trying to get his life together. You know he needed that car for his interview. You ruined his future. The words hit me with a heat that made my cheeks burn. My head pulsed painfully, but I forced myself to stay calm. He stole my car. He knew it was mine. I was assaulted. Instead of responding to any of that, she gasped theatrically. Your father told us what happened. He said you provoked him. He said you hit him first. My jaw dropped. Hit him first, I whispered in disbelief. I could barely keep myself upright. She continued in a righteous hiss. You embarrassed him in front of the neighbors. You always were dramatic. When I tried to respond, she hung up on me. The next call came seconds later, then another, as if my parents had summoned the entire extended family into an angry phone tree fueled by denial and loyalty toward the golden child. My cousin Rebecca called only to scream. My Uncle Jeff called to inform me I was a disgrace to my family name. The cousin I barely talked to, Melissa, called to tell me she hoped I could live with myself after destroying my parents' hearts. I stared at the buzzing phone, the screen lighting up repeatedly with unknown numbers and contact names from relatives I had not seen in years. It felt surreal. Like watching a malfunctioning slot machine spit out accusations one after another. None of them asked if I was alive after being left unconscious in the rain. None asked if I needed help. None asked if I needed a ride or a safe place or a moment of kindness. All they cared about was Noah. Noah's interview, Noah's future, Noah's convenience. The familiar sting of injustice flared hot in my chest, mixing with something deeper, darker, more bitter, a lifetime of being the afterthought, the caretaker, the one expected to bend and break so Noah could stretch and soar. My phone buzzed again, and I almost ignored it until I saw the caller ID. Grandma Elsie, my mother's mother, the only relative who ever showed me genuine affection. For a brief, aching second, I thought she might actually ask if I was okay. I answered with a trembling breath. Grandma. Her voice, however, was somber and sharp. Ava. What did you do? Her disappointment sliced deeper than anyone else's anger. I closed my eyes. Grandma, he stole my car. Dad hit me. I was knocked unconscious. I was in the hospital last night. She exhaled, but not in sympathy, in frustration. Your father said you are exaggerating. He said it was a small shove and you decided to collapse like you always do. Collapse, I repeated hollowly. He punched me. I have stitches. She continued as if she had not heard me. You know how Noah is. He needs help. Your father told me you need to be more understanding. My throat tightened and I struggled to form words. I always help. I helped for years. I am hurt. He hit me so hard I blacked out. Grandma sounded tired. Ava, please just drop the charges. Family must stick together. Everything inside me went quiet, completely quiet. A clean, dead silence like the void between lightning and thunder. Then I hung up, slowly, deliberately. My hands shook as I placed the phone face down on the couch. Lily approached quietly and sat next to me. Her eyes scanned my expression carefully. Ava, what did she say? I laughed, but it was a broken, brittle sound. She told me to drop the charges, that I was exaggerating. Lily's eyes darkened with fury. Of course! Of course they are twisting everything to protect the golden child and the man who hit you. She reached over and gently covered my hand with hers. Ava, you know this, right? This is what happens when someone stops playing their assigned role in a toxic family. You stepped out of line, so they are punishing you for it. I stared at the muted television across the room, though I could not see what was on. My vision was swimming with tears I refused to let fall. The assault hurt. The blackout terrified me. But this was something else entirely. This was abandonment carved with surgical precision. This was betrayal orchestrated by people who were supposed to love me. Another call came in. Then another. I silenced my phone entirely. For a few minutes, there was nothing but the soft sound of rain tapping the window. My pulse slowly settled, though each beat still throbbed inside the bruise beneath my eye. Then a text banner flashed across the screen. Mom, you should be ashamed of yourself. Noah is devastated. Call the police back and retract your report. Your father is furious. Stop ruining this family. Then another. Mom, you always were selfish. It is time you put your family first, Ava. I felt my hands curl into fists. My family first. That phrase echoed through me with an ugly familiarity. Family first always meant Noah first. Noah's needs, Noah's comfort, Noah's convenience, and me second. Me last. Me never. Something inside me hardened like cooling steel. I picked up my phone and blocked my mother's number. Then my father's, then Noah's, then every relative who had called. One by one, I erased them from my phone until the notifications stopped and the silence that replaced them felt like oxygen finally entering my lungs after years of suffocation. When I finished, Lily let out a small breath. That is your first boundary. I nodded slowly, feeling the smallest tremor of power rising beneath the exhaustion. For the first time in my life, I was choosing myself, and it terrified my entire family. Good. Let them be terrified. I lay back against Lily's couch, the room dim and quiet, except for the hum of her old refrigerator, and somewhere between the pounding in my skull and the ache in my chest, memories began slipping in like unwelcome ghosts, pushing their way through half-opened doors. Maybe it was the concussion. Maybe it was the emotional collapse that always follows a lifetime of pretending things are fine. Or maybe it was just finally seeing the truth without the layers of excuses I had been trained to wrap around it. Whatever the reason, the past began replaying itself with brutal clarity. The first memory that surfaced was small, almost insignificant in the grand scheme of things, yet sharp enough to leave a scar. I was 8 years old, clutching a crumpled permission slip for a school field trip to the Science Museum. My classmates were excited. My teacher had said parents just needed to pay $5 and sign. When I asked Mom that morning, she sighed deeply as if I had asked for $1,000 instead of $5. Ava, we cannot afford that right now. Okay, just stay at school and help your teacher. Noah rushed into the kitchen seconds later, waving a toy catalog with a picture of a remote-controlled race car circled in thick marker. Mom, I want this one, Dad said, maybe after payday. Mom gave him a smile so soft I almost felt myself disappearing behind it. We will see, sweetheart. Maybe sooner if you behave. The race car arrived 2 days later. The field trip came and went. I stayed behind. I told myself it did not matter. I told myself I was being dramatic. I was 8. The next memory came in a rush. age 12. I had saved chore money for weeks, hoping to join the school art club. The fee was $20. I brought it to my mother with excitement trembling in my voice. She said art supplies are expensive, Ava. We cannot commit to that right now. But that same afternoon, Noah came home with a brand new soccer uniform and cleats that cost 4 times as much. Dad announced proudly, "My boy is going to be a champion." I sat on the stairs holding the $20 bill, learning silently how to shrink myself. At 15, the imbalance grew sharper. That was the year Noah got caught shoplifting at the mall with his friends. Security detained him and called our parents. Dad returned home red-faced and furious. Not at Noah for stealing, but at the store manager for humiliating his son. He ranted for an hour about how boys make mistakes and how real men stand up for their family. The next week, they rewarded Noah with a second-hand car so he would have better things to do than wander around at the mall with bad influences. I did not have a car. I walked to school every day, rain or not, snow or not. One afternoon when I returned shivering and soaked because I had forgotten my umbrella, Mom pursed her lips and said, "You really should plan better, Ava. Noah needs the car for practice today. He actually has responsibilities." The memory that stung the most came when I was 16. I had stayed up half the night studying for a biology exam while babysitting Noah because he refused to sleep without someone nearby. The next morning during breakfast, Noah made some snide remark about me being too bossy. I responded calmly, telling him to stop being rude. He threw a tantrum, a loud one. Dad stormed in, eyes blazing, and slapped me so hard my ears rang. "Do not talk back to your brother," he shouted. He apologized to Noah afterward. I apologized too, even though I was the one who was hit. That was the day I realized my place in the family was not daughter. It was buffer, caretaker, background character. Someone meant to absorb the blows so Noah never had to face consequences. The years blurred after that. I worked part-time jobs from age 14 onward. Babysitting, grocery bagging, assisting at a local vet clinic. Every paycheck went into a shoebox under my bed because I knew no one would help me pay for college. Meanwhile, Noah coasted through school with barely passing grades, each failure met with new excuses from my parents. He is a boy. Boys mature slowly. He will figure it out. Give him time. The summer I turned 18, I got accepted into nursing school with scholarships and grants I had fought tooth and nail for. At dinner, I told my parents proudly, expecting at least a small spark of pride in return. Mom frowned. "Nursing. You will never have time for a family," Dad added. "You think you are better than us now, Ava. You are not as smart as you think. Noah will make something of himself while you wipe old people's mouths." Noah chuckled under his breath. I swallowed the humiliation and left for school 2 months later, carrying everything I owned in 2 suitcases. I rarely came home after that. Not because I wanted distance, but because distance was the only place I could breathe. But even from afar, I still played the role they etched into me. When Noah lost his first car driving drunk, my mother called me crying. "Ava, can you help your brother? He needs money to get to his job." I wired him $200 I barely had. When he totaled the second car texting while driving, my parents begged me to co-sign a new loan. I refused. That was the first boundary I ever tried to set. My father called me ungrateful. My mother called me cruel. Noah called me useless. I still hear those words sometimes when I am trying to fall asleep. The third car he destroyed on a rural road after taking a curve too fast. My parents covered the damages by draining their savings and blamed me for not stepping up to help. "You left your brother helpless," Mom said through tears. "You think you are too good for us now." Meanwhile, I worked double shifts, studied, built my career piece by piece. I earned my nursing license. I paid off my student loans. I bought my Lexus after 10 years of scrubbing floors in the hospital, treating patients at all hours, pushing myself through exhaustion because I wanted one thing in my life that was entirely mine. And still, every holiday, every birthday, every visit home, I would hear it. "Ava, you know Noah needs help. Ava, be patient. Ava, take care of your brother. Ava, do not make your father upset. Ava, do not provoke him. Ava, your family should come first." Always the same refrain, a chorus designed to keep me small. Now sitting on Lily's couch with an ice pack against my cheek while my body tried to recover from a concussion, my father inflicted the truth, finally crystallized with merciless clarity. This was not about a car. This was never about a car. This was about a lifetime of being told that my worth was measured only by what I could give up so someone else could have more. And for the first time in 32 years, I had said no, and they hated me for it. I returned to work 2 days later because staying home made everything worse. At Lily's apartment, I had too much silence, too many memories crawling under my skin, too many hours to replay the sound of my father's fist connecting with my skull. At least in the hospital, the noise had purpose. The chaos had direction. The pain of other people drowned out some of my own. But walking through the staff entrance felt different this time. My badge weighed heavier. My steps felt uncertain. The fluorescent lights seemed harsher, bouncing off the polished floors in dizzying streaks. When I stepped into the break room, conversations stopped instantly. My coworkers froze mid-sip, mid-laugh, mid-sentence. For a moment, all I heard was the buzzing of the vending machine and the hum of the refrigerator. Then I saw their eyes, wide, concerned, confused, and then horrified as their gazes dropped to the purple bruise blooming down the side of my face. Jordan, the night shift nurse who had triaged me in the ER, was the first to move. She walked straight to me, her brows knitting. "Ava." "What happened?" Her voice was soft but steady, the kind people use when they do not want to scare someone already on the edge. I opened my mouth, but the words tangled. I tried again. "My father. He hit me." The room shifted. Not literally, but in energy. Something tightened, sharpened, turned protective. Nurses are trained for crisis. And in that moment, all of them moved with an instinctive understanding of trauma. Jordan guided me to a chair and pressed a cup of warm tea into my hands. Another nurse closed the break room door quietly. A tech named Marcus crouched to eye level, speaking gently. "You do not have to explain more than you are ready to. But we are here. All of us." I felt the sting of tears rising, but I blinked hard to keep them from spilling. I hated being seen like this. Fragile, broken. But something about the concern in their eyes softened the walls I had spent years holding up. Dr. Kaplan walked in, then his white coat swaying slightly as he turned to speak to someone behind him. When he noticed me, he stopped mid-step. He was 68, close to retirement, but sharp as steel, and known for being blunt in a way that could either terrify or comfort, depending on who you were. When his gaze landed on my face, his expression shifted from curiosity to anger. Not the loud, explosive kind. The quiet, deadly kind that grows from deep empathy. He pulled out the chair beside me and sat down slowly, his voice low. "Ava, who hurt you, my father." The words came out barely above a whisper. His jaw tightened. "I see. Did he cause the concussion? The ER diagnosed? Yes." And he locked me outside afterward, in the rain. I blacked out on the driveway. For a long moment, Dr. Kaplan said nothing. Then he reached up and adjusted his glasses the way he always did before saying something important. "Ava, listen to me. I have been practicing medicine for over 40 years. I have seen patients whose families carried them through hell and back, and I have seen families who created the hell." His eyes softened, but there was steel beneath. "You did not grow up with a family. You survived one." The words hit with such precision that I felt my breath catch in my chest. It was as if someone had finally put language to a truth I had never dared to say out loud. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. My throat tightened painfully. Dr. Kaplan leaned forward. "You hear me? This was not your fault. It was not provoked. It was not justified. It was abuse. And you standing up for yourself, now that is strength, Ava. That is courage." My vision blurred as tears welled up, but this time I did not fight them. I let one slide down my cheek, quiet and hot against the bruised skin. Jordan gently handed me a tissue. As I dabbed my face, I felt something shift inside me. A small but unmistakable turning point. For years, my family had rewritten reality in front of my eyes. They had trained me to question my own perception, my own reactions, my own worth. But here, in this room where I spent thousands of hours caring for strangers, I finally felt what it was like to be cared for in return. It was disorienting, and healing, and terrifying. I tried to breathe through it, grounding myself in the familiar scent of antiseptic and freshly brewed coffee. Then Lily burst through the door, breathless, her hair slightly tangled from rushing. Ava. Oh my God, you did not answer my text. I thought something happened. She reached me in 2 steps and pulled me into a careful hug, mindful of my stitches. I am okay, I whispered, even though I was not. She tightened her hold. We are going to get through this, I promise. When she pulled away, she glanced around the room at everyone watching with concern. Thank you for watching out for her. Dr. Kaplan nodded once. She is one of us. She deserves to feel safe here. A warmth spread in my chest, so foreign it almost hurt. Safe. The word felt heavy with possibility. Lily looked at me with that fierce loyalty she always carried. You are not going back there. You are staying with me until everything is sorted. I nodded because I knew she was right. I could not return home. I did not have a home there anymore. After a few more minutes, everyone slowly returned to their duties. But before Dr. Kaplan left, he paused in the doorway and turned back toward me. Ava, one more thing. Do not mistake their silence for love. Real love does not require you to bleed for it. Then he walked away, leaving me with a truth that settled deep into my bones. That afternoon, I filled out a workplace injury report so they would know the truth behind the bruises. I explained everything to the nursing supervisor, who offered time off if I needed it. For the first time in my adult life, I did not feel ashamed while telling my story. I felt seen, heard, supported. And as the day went on, a quiet understanding took root inside me. My family might have abandoned me, but I was not alone. Not anymore. 2 days after returning to work, I received a call from the Multnomah County District Attorney's Office asking me to come in for a formal meeting. The moment I hung up, a tremor spread down my arms. Hearing from the police was one thing, but speaking to a prosecutor made everything feel heavier, more official, more real. Lily insisted on driving me. She kept glancing at me during the ride as if checking whether I might shatter without warning. My head still ached, and the bruises across my cheek had deepened from purple to a dark, mottled blue. But the dizziness had lessened enough that I felt steady walking into the DA's building. The reception area was surprisingly calm, more like a modest law office than a place where people's futures were negotiated. A receptionist with a kind smile led us to a small conference room. Pale walls, a rectangular table, 2 chairs on each side, a box of tissues already placed in the center. My stomach tightened. Tissues meant they expected tears. After a few minutes, a woman walked in mid-40s wearing a navy blazer and carrying a folder so thick it made my breath hitch. She introduced herself as Assistant District Attorney Morgan Shaw. Her handshake was firm professional, but her eyes held warmth. Ava, thank you for coming in and thank you for cooperating with the investigation. I know this has been difficult. She motioned for me to sit. Lily asked if she could stay with me, and Ada Shaw agreed without hesitation. Once we settled, Shaw opened the folder. Inside were printed photos, police reports, my medical file, copies of text messages, even screenshots of traffic camera footage showing my Lexus being driven by Noah. Seeing everything laid out in physical form sent a ripple of unreality through me. This was my life, but dissected, cataloged, preserved like evidence in a crime show. Shaw cleared her throat gently. I want to walk you through what we have so far. First, regarding the assault. She held up a photo of the bruising along my temple and cheek. The ER report indicates a concussion, a contusion, and a laceration requiring stitches. The injury pattern is consistent with blunt force trauma from a fist or a similarly hard object. My stomach flipped, but I nodded. That's what happened. She placed the photo down and continued. You also indicated that after the blow, your father and mother closed the door, locked it, and left you outside unconscious in the rain. Yes, I whispered. She paused, letting that sit in the air. That detail is incredibly important legally. Not only does it show intent to cause harm, but it shows willful neglect. This is not a gray area, Ava. This is a criminal assault. Hearing the words still felt surreal. Assault, as if labeling it something official suddenly validated what I had been trying to rationalize away for years. Next, Shaw said, sliding another document toward me. Let's discuss the stolen vehicle. We have the registration records showing you as the sole owner of the Lexus RX. We have your loan payoff receipt. We have insurance documents. All of it in your name alone. She flipped to the next page. We also have a text from your mother stating directly, "We gave it to Noah. He needs it more." My throat tightened at the sight of her message printed in black and white. The prosecutor looked at me closely. This is extremely clear evidence that they took the car without permission. It contradicts any claim that you gifted or loaned the vehicle. She reached for another image. And here are the traffic camera stills capturing your brother driving the vehicle. Noah's face stared back at me through a grainy grayscale photo, his expression casual, unaware that evidence was documenting every moment. ADA Shaw straightened in her seat. Here is the most important thing, Ava. Even if your mother or father told your brother he could have the car, they had no legal right to do so. That makes your brother's possession of the vehicle unlawful. Noah claimed he thought it was his, I said quietly. She nodded. Yes, he made that statement. But in the eyes of the law, ignorance is not an excuse. The burden is on him to verify ownership. He did not. She tapped the paper. Which is why the charge of possession of stolen property will stand. My pulse quickened hearing the formal phrasing. I knew it was right, but knowing it was right did not make it easier. The prosecutor leaned forward, folding her hands. Now, here's the part that will be difficult for you to hear. Your parents are attempting to interfere with the case. My breath stalled. What do you mean? She exhaled. They have contacted our office several times. They claim you are unstable. They claim you fabricated the events. They claim you threw yourself backward to cause the injury. My jaw clenched. They are lying. ADA Shaw nodded firmly. We are well aware. Their statements conflict directly with evidence. She tapped a medical page. Medical professionals diagnosed a concussion caused by blunt force impact. That cannot be self-inflicted in the way they claim. She slid a different paper forward. Additionally, your neighbor who found you unconscious has provided a sworn statement indicating you were outside alone in the rain with visible injuries. That carries significant weight. Relief washed through me so strongly it made my eyes burn. Mrs. Carmichael, she saved me. The prosecutor offered a small, reassuring smile. She absolutely did, and she effectively shut down any narrative your parents attempted to create. Shaw closed the folder and took a breath. Now, here is where we move forward. Your father will be charged with assault in the 4th degree. Based on your medical report and witness testimony, we expect that charge to hold. She paused, watching my reaction. I swallowed. Okay, and Noah's case. He will be arraigned on charges of unauthorized use of a motor vehicle and possession of stolen property. Those charges will proceed separately from your father's assault case. The room felt too warm suddenly. My heartbeat thudded in my ears. One moment my family had been the unshakable structure I grew up inside of, even if it had sharp edges, and now it was collapsing like a building eaten from the inside by termites. Shaw spoke gently. Ava, I know this is overwhelming, but I want to emphasize something. You are not responsible for their choices. You reported a crime. You protected yourself. You did the right thing. Lily reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You did. Her voice cracked with sincerity. You finally did. The prosecutor closed her folder slowly. Before we end, I need to ask you something directly. Are you prepared to move forward with these charges even if your parents and brother deny everything and pressure you to change your statement? I felt the weight of my entire life pressing on the answer. The guilt, the fear, the loyalty I had been conditioned to bleed for. But beneath all that was something steadier, something growing stronger. I lifted my chin. Yes. I am moving forward. I am not backing down. ADA Shaw nodded, once respect flickering in her eyes. Good, then we will pursue this fully. When Lily and I walked out of the building into the cool Portland air, something inside me felt different, not lighter, but stronger. And for the first time, I realized accountability was not cruelty. It was justice. And justice was finally slowly coming for my family. The social fallout for my father began quietly, almost imperceptibly, like a slow leak in a tire that nobody notices until the car is wobbling dangerously down the road. At first, it was small things, a missed call from one of his longtime friends that never came back, a church event he normally helped organize suddenly being assigned to someone else. My mother posted nothing on Facebook for days, which for her was practically a distress signal. At Lily's apartment, I sat at the kitchen counter sipping lukewarm tea when my phone buzzed again. Not a family member this time, a coworker of my dad's, a man named Ron who had known our family since I was 10. His text was short. "You okay, kiddo? Heard something happened." I hesitated before answering. "Yes, I am safe," he replied instantly. "I knew something was off. He came to work ranting about you, said you were being dramatic and trying to ruin his life, said you made up the injury, asked if anyone had a spare room because your mom was making him crazy." My hands froze on the cup. The rhythmic ache in my temple pulsed harder. Of course he was trying to spin the story. Of course he was trying to paint himself as the victim. Ron sent another message. "People are talking. He's not getting sympathy. Not after how he yelled at the supervisor yesterday. I'm sorry you're going through this." I stared at the messages, feeling a mixture of vindication and sorrow. My father had always been the man everyone thought was gruff but lovable. The guy who helped people move furniture. The guy who volunteered at fundraisers. The guy who could fix a car engine with nothing but a wrench and a cigarette tucked behind his ear. No one outside our house ever saw the part of him that could turn vicious in half a second. Until now. Lily set down her fork and leaned closer. "What is it? I read the messages aloud?" My voice trembling somewhere between disbelief and bitter understanding. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she let out a soft, low whistle. "Well, looks like the city's finally seeing the real Frank." I nodded, but the movement hurt, so I pressed my fingers gently to the side of my head. It felt surreal, like I was watching my father's life unravel from a distance, powerless to stop the unraveling, but no longer wanting to. Later that afternoon, another message arrived, this one from an old neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, who used to bring us lemon bars every holiday. "Ava, I heard what happened. I am so sorry. Your father tried to talk to my husband about your lies. It did not go well. We do not condone violence. Please take care of yourself." My stomach twisted with a strange compassion I did not expect to feel. Even now, even after everything, part of me felt guilty for being the reason my father's image was cracking. But guilt is a powerful illusion and one I had spent my life drowning under. I forced myself to breathe through it. Let it rise. Let it fall. Let it pass. By the next morning, my father's social world was disintegrating faster. Word spread quickly in a neighborhood like ours. People who once waved from their porches now avoided the end of our street. Men who used to stop by the driveway to talk about lawn equipment or fishing trips suddenly found themselves busy. My mother left voicemail after voicemail for me, each angrier than the last. "What did you tell people, Ava? Your father is suffering. You are tearing this family apart. You need to fix this." One message was simply her crying, blaming me for my father losing his temper in front of people he respected. I deleted them all without listening to the end. But the real blow came 2 days later when my father's old company supervisor called him in for a discussion. He had worked at that auto shop for 20 years. He knew every tool on every wall. He could rebuild an engine faster than some mechanics half his age. It was his pride, his territory, his identity. And now it was slipping. Lily and I sat in her living room when my grandmother texted me. "Your father came home early. Something happened at work." I did not respond. I waited. An hour later, my mother called. I let it ring. She called again. And again. On the fourth attempt, Lily grabbed my phone and held it toward me. "Just answer so she stops blowing up your phone." I took a deep breath and answered. "Hello?" My mother's voice was sharp enough to cut glass. "Are you proud of yourself? Your father was told not to come back this week. They think he is a danger." Her breath hitched in rage. They think he's unstable." I stared at the floor, my pulse thudding against my bandages. "Mom, he hit me. He put me in the hospital." She exhaled as if I were being absurdly sensitive. "You know he did not mean it. You provoked him. You always provoke him." Heat flared behind my eyes. I swallowed it back. "Mom, he punched me hard enough to knock me unconscious. They saw the injury. The hospital filed the report. That is why he is facing charges." Her voice rose into something shrill and desperate. "They would not even listen to his side because of what you said. They treated him like a criminal, Ava. Your father. Don't you care at all what this is doing to us?" I felt something crack then, like a fault line splitting open inside me. For years, I had carried the weight of their emotions as though my survival depended on keeping them calm, keeping them proud, keeping them from collapsing. But now the words spilled out before I could force them back. "Mom, I almost died. I was left outside in the rain unconscious. You locked the door. You walked away. You did nothing." The silence on the line was cold and poisonous. Then she snapped, "You always exaggerate. You are so dramatic. You want attention so badly, Ava. Maybe you should have thought of your family before you ran to the police." I hung up. I blocked her. I sat very still while the realization washed over me. They were not upset because they loved my father. They were upset because the facade they had spent decades building was cracking. They were upset because the truth was finally louder than their excuses. They were upset because for the first time the consequences they had always shielded themselves from were landing at their own feet. As the hours passed, more texts arrived from neighbors I barely knew. Many supportive, some neutral, a few quietly admitting they had noticed things over the years. The yelling, the slamming doors, the way I walked on eggshells, the way my mother always apologized for my father's temper. One message stood out. It was simple, from a man 2 streets away. "We saw the ambulance. We believed you before the police said anything." That line settled deep inside me like a seed of validation. My father's world was collapsing not because of me, but because of the truth finally stepping into the light. And as painful as it was to witness, I could not deny the quiet current of justice running through it. For once, the consequences were not mine to carry. They were his, and he finally had to hold them. The morning of Noah's hearing arrived colder than expected, a sharp Oregon chill that clung to my skin even beneath my coat. I had barely slept the night before. My mind kept replaying the same loop, Noah driving my Lexus with that entitled ease, Noah claiming ignorance as if the registration magically changed names, Noah insisting he was the victim while I lay unconscious in the rain. Lily drove me to the courthouse, her hands tight around the steering wheel, eyes flicking toward me every few seconds as if checking to make sure I was not about to fall apart. I felt steady enough, but it was the kind of steadiness that comes from exhaustion and sheer will rather than peace. When we reached the courthouse steps, a wave of nerves rolled through me so strong my knees trembled. The building loomed gray and imposing against the cloudy sky. Lily touched my elbow gently. "You do not have to go in if you are not ready." I swallowed hard. I need to be here. Not for him. For me. Inside, the fluorescent lights washed the hallway in a sterile glow. People milled about quietly murmuring to attorneys clutching folders avoiding eye contact. Anxiety pooled in my stomach as we waited outside courtroom 3B. My palms were damp. My heart thudded in a steady but fast rhythm. ADA Shaw appeared moments later wearing a different blazer from the meeting but the same focused expression. She nodded respectfully to me. "I am glad you came, Ava. Today should move relatively quickly." She handed me a seating guide. "You will not have to speak. You are here as a victim witness, not a participant. The judge will handle the arraignment and plea." Hearing the words victim witness made my throat tighten. I had always existed in the background of my family, the responsible one, the invisible one, the one whose needs disappeared beneath Noah's endless crises. Being acknowledged as a victim felt strange, like stepping into a version of myself I was still learning to name. The bailiff opened the door and everyone filed inside. The courtroom smelled faintly of old wood and worn carpet. The judge sat at the bench reviewing documents, glasses low on her nose. I took a seat near the back with Lily beside me, her hand resting lightly on my forearm. Then the side door opened, and Noah entered, wearing the beige uniform of county custody. His wrists were cuffed. His expression was a mix of annoyance and disbelief, as if he could not understand how he had ended up here, as if reality itself had betrayed him. His eyes scanned the room and landed on me. For a split second, something flickered in his face. Not remorse, not fear. Annoyance. Almost irritation that I had had the audacity to appear. He rolled his eyes before looking away. It hit me like a cold slap. Even now, even after being arrested driving a stolen vehicle, even after spending a night in jail, he still believed he was the victim. The judge began the hearing with formal language. Case number, defendant name, charges. Noah Reynolds is charged with unauthorized use of a vehicle and possession of stolen property in the first degree. Noah's public defender, a thin man with tired eyes, rose to speak. Your Honor, my client wishes to enter a plea. The judge lifted her gaze. And what is the plea, counsel? The defender glanced at Noah, then back at the judge. Guilty, Your Honor. The word seemed to echo in the courtroom. I felt something tighten under my ribs, a strange mix of shock and relief. I had expected denial, or excuses, or a dramatic performance about misunderstanding and family loyalty, but guilt. Even if it was forced, even if it was part of a deal, it still felt like a stone dropped into a still pond. The judge tapped her pen. Mr. Reynolds, do you understand that by pleading guilty, you are acknowledging that you took a vehicle without permission and were in possession of stolen property? Noah nodded stiffly. Yes. The judge studied him for a long moment. Then she asked, do you wish to make a statement before sentencing? He glanced at his attorney, who nodded subtly. Noah cleared his throat, looking as though the words were being dragged from him like thorns. I took my sister's car. I should not have. I knew it wasn't mine. I should have checked. I thought, Mom said. He faltered, pushing frustration through clenched teeth. I was wrong. I am sorry. He did not look at me when he said it. Not once. The apology hung in the air, hollow and weightless, but hearing him admit it out loud still struck something deep inside me. After a brief pause, the judge proceeded. Mr. Reynolds, given your cooperation and lack of prior felonies, the court accepts your plea. You are sentenced to 12 months of probation, 100 hours of community service, restitution for impound fees, and a 1-year suspension of your driver's license. Lily squeezed my hand. It is something, she whispered. Not enough, but something. The judge added sternly, you are also ordered to complete a responsible driving course and a theft accountability program. If you violate any part of this, the plea deal will be void and you will face full sentencing. Do you understand? Noah muttered. Yes, Your Honor. The judge nodded once. Court is adjourned. The bailiff ordered everyone to rise. I stood feeling suddenly lightheaded. Not dizzy, just strange, surreal. Noah was escorted toward the door, still avoiding my eyes. My chest tightened with a swirl of emotions I could not untangle. Anger, sadness, relief, even pity. Lily placed a hand on my shoulder. Ava, you did what you had to do. This is the first real consequence he has ever faced. ADA Shaw approached me as the courtroom began to empty. You handled yourself well, Ava. Today was an important step. There will be more hearings for your father's case. But for now, take a breath. The hardest part with Noah is done. I nodded weakly. The weight of everything felt heavy but strangely less suffocating. As we walked out of the building, cold air hit my face. I inhaled deeply. For the first time in my life, I had watched the justice system address a wound my family always insisted I should hide. For the first time, Noah was not shielded by excuses or indulgence. For the first time, he stood in front of a judge rather than behind my parents. And for the first time, I realized that accountability, even imperfect, even incomplete, was powerful enough to shift something in my world. Maybe not everything, but enough. Enough to keep going. Enough to keep fighting. Enough to believe the next chapter might finally belong to me, not to the pain they kept trying to write me into. The day of my father's arraignment arrived with a heaviness that settled into my chest long before I stepped out of Lily's car. The courthouse looked the same as it had during Noah's hearing, but this time the chill in the air cut deeper. My pulse thudded slow and tense against the tender spot near my temple, still swollen beneath fading bruises. Even though 2 weeks had passed since the assault, my body remembered the blow with perfect clarity. Every time I blinked, I saw his fist coming toward me. Every time I showered, the water traced the scar above my eyebrow like a reminder I could not wash away. Lily walked beside me as we entered close, but giving me the space she somehow knew I needed. When we reached courtroom 5C, ADA Shaw was already waiting. She greeted me with a nod that carried both respect and quiet reassurance. "Ava, thank you for coming. Your presence is important today." I swallowed. My throat felt tight. "Is he here yet?" Shaw shifted her folder. "Yes. He was brought in a few minutes ago. He has a public defender since your mother insists they cannot afford private counsel." The irony stung, considering how much money they had drained to rescue Noah over the years. She opened the door and motioned for us to take seats in the victim witness row. I sat carefully, feeling my heartbeat thrum against my ribs. The courtroom buzzed faintly with whispers until the bailiff called, "All rise." Then the side door opened. My father stepped inside, flanked by a deputy. Seeing him in person after everything made my breath catch. He looked older than I remembered, shoulders slumped, beard untrimmed, eyes bloodshot with the kind of rage that has nowhere to go. But the moment his gaze landed on me, something sharpened behind his expression. Anger, yes, but also disbelief. As if the very idea that I was here participating in his prosecution offended the core of his identity. He sat at the defense table, shackles clinking softly. The sound made me flinch. His attorney leaned toward him, whispering something, but my father never took his eyes off me. The judge entered and began reading the charges, her voice steady and formal. "Frank Morgan is charged with assault in the 4th degree, a Class A misdemeanor." The courtroom air tightened. My father's jaw flexed. The judge continued. "The defendant is accused of striking the victim Ava Morgan in the head with a closed fist, causing concussion, contusion, and a laceration requiring medical treatment. The defendant is further accused of leaving the victim outside the residence in a state of unconsciousness." The words rang like cold metal. Hearing my trauma spoken aloud in legal language made everything inside me twist. I felt Lily's hand slide onto mine. I did not look at her, but I squeezed back. I needed that anchor. The judge nodded to the defense. "How does the defendant plead?" His attorney stood. "Not guilty, Your Honor." My father's gaze burned into me as though daring me to react. I stayed perfectly still. The judge glanced at ADA Shaw. "The state may proceed." Shaw rose with calm, controlled authority. "Your Honor, the state has medical documentation from the ER, including diagnostic imaging, confirming the concussion. We have photographic evidence of the injuries. We have a sworn affidavit from the neighbor who found the victim unconscious. And we have texts from the defendant's spouse confirming the vehicle was taken without permission and that the victim was locked outside." Each item she listed tightened a coil of tension in my chest and loosened another. Evidence had always been my lifeline in this process. Evidence did not bend to my father's temper or my mother's manipulation. Evidence did not care about family hierarchy. Evidence told the truth. Shaw continued. "The state is requesting a full no-contact order during the proceedings and mandatory enrollment in anger management." The defense attorney stood quickly, shaking his head. "Your Honor, my client maintains he did not intend harm. He states the contact was accidental during a heated argument." Shaw didn't so much as blink. "The injuries are not consistent with accidental contact. The medical examiner noted blunt force trauma delivered with significant force." The judge looked between them, then turned to my father. "Mr. Morgan, you are to remain silent unless addressed directly. Do you understand?" He glared but nodded once. The judge tapped her pen thoughtfully. "Based on the evidence provided, the court is granting the state's request. A no-contact order will be issued today. You are prohibited from contacting Ms. Morgan directly or through third parties." My breath came out shakier than I expected. This was real. A judge was telling my father he no longer had access to me. He no longer had power over me. I felt a strange sensation, something like stepping out into the sun after years underground. But then my father snapped. He lurched forward slightly, chains rattling as the deputy stepped in. His voice spilled out in a low, furious growl. "This is ridiculous! Ava is lying. She always lies. She provoked me. She—" The judge slammed her gavel once. "That is enough, Mr. Morgan. Any further outburst will result in contempt charges," he snarled under his breath, chest heaving. Lily stiffened beside me. Ada Shaw remained unshaken. "Your Honor, this outburst further demonstrates why a no-contact order is necessary." The judge nodded. "I agree. The court finds probable cause. A trial date will be set. Until then, Mr. Morgan, you will comply with the conditions set forth today." My father glared at me with the kind of hatred I had seen only once before years ago when I refused to give Noah money he demanded. It was the look of a man who believed control was love and obedience was loyalty. A man who could not fathom being held accountable. When court adjourned, he was escorted out another door. He never looked away from me until the moment he disappeared behind it. When the latch clicked shut, my knees finally weakened. Lily slipped an arm around me. "That was intense," she whispered. I nodded, my voice barely a thread. I thought he would explode. He did, just in cuffs this time. A trembling exhale left my lungs shaky but cleansing. Ada Shaw approached us. "You did well, Ava. I know how difficult that was. The next steps will move slowly, but today was important. Today the system acknowledged what he did." I managed a quiet thank you. As we left the courthouse, the cold air felt sharper but cleaner, almost purifying. For the first time in my life, I had stood in front of my father without shrinking, without apologizing, without silencing myself to keep the peace. He had looked at me with all his fury, and I had remained standing. I walked down the courthouse steps, knowing something inside me had shifted permanently. Justice had taken its first real bite. And he felt it. The fallout after my father's arraignment arrived faster and hit harder than I expected, like a tidal wave I saw forming on the horizon but still could not outrun. It began the same evening, just an hour after Lily and I returned to her apartment. My phone lit up with a text from my mother, the preview flashing across the screen like a threat. "You have destroyed this family." I stared at it without opening it. A cold numbness spread across my chest, the kind that comes after too many shocks in too little time. Lily glanced over from the kitchen island where she was chopping vegetables for dinner. "Another one from her," I nodded. She sighed. "Do not open it. You already know what it says." I knew she was right, but my hands still trembled as I turned the screen face down. My mother had a way of poisoning my thoughts with only a few sentences, especially when she weaponized guilt. I tried to push it aside, focusing on the soft clatter of Lily's knife against the cutting board, the smell of onions and garlic drifting through the small apartment, the safe feeling of being somewhere I did not have to brace for the next emotional blow. But the reprieve did not last long. At exactly 8:12 p.m., my grandmother's name appeared on the screen. She rarely texted. When she did, it was usually short-sweet or to remind me about a birthday. This time it was only 3 words. "Your mother's crying." The familiar knot in my stomach tightened. I had spent decades being conditioned to respond to my mother's tears as if they were alarms I alone could silence. But for the first time in my life, I did not reach for the phone. I let the message sit there unanswered. My grandmother sent another. "She is devastated. She says you are being cruel." The knot turned into a painful twist. I forced myself to breathe slowly in through the nose, out through the mouth. "Your father is heartbroken," Grandma wrote. "Noah is ashamed. They cannot believe what you said in court. They feel betrayed." The word betrayed hit me like a slap. Betrayed. As if I were the one who inflicted the wound. As if I were the one who locked someone outside in the rain while their head bled. As if I were the one who stole a car. As if I were the one who punched a family member unconscious. I set the phone down harder than intended. Lily turned instantly, noticing the shift in my breathing. "Ava, hey," she said softly. What happened? I told her. Every word, every guilt-edged text, every manipulative phrase that had been embedded into my bloodstream since childhood. Lily listened, her jaw tightening with each sentence. When I finished, she exhaled slowly. Ava, they're trying to pull you back in. That's what toxic families do. They scramble when they lose control. They use guilt because it used to work on you. I wiped a tear from my cheek, frustrated that even now, after everything, a part of me still tensed at the idea of disappointing them. The phone buzzed again. This time it was a call. Aunt Joan. I declined. Then Aunt Karen. Declined. Then my cousin Rebecca. Declined. More texts followed, piling in like soldiers marching in formation, each one more vicious than the last. You are ungrateful. You made your father look like an animal. Do you really want him to go to jail? You could have handled this privately. Family does not drag family into court. Family forgives. Family sacrifices. Family does not turn on their own. I felt sick, physically sick, because beneath the accusations there were the old familiar rules I had grown up with. Do not embarrass the family. Do not contradict your parents. Do not challenge Noah. Do not tell the truth if the truth makes us look bad. Lily came over and gently pried the phone from my hand. Come here, she said. She led me to the couch and sat beside me. Ava, look at me. I lifted my eyes reluctantly. Your parents hurt you. They assaulted you. They stole from you. They lied about you. And now they're trying to manipulate you into protecting them. That is not family. That is abuse. My throat tightened painfully. I know, but hearing it out loud made something inside me crack like old ice beginning to melt. The phone buzzed again. This time, the message was from my mother. We no longer consider you part of this family. The room seemed to tilt. For a moment, everything felt distant, muffled, as if I were underwater. Lily saw the look on my face and grabbed the phone to read the message. Her eyes widened. Ava! I swallowed hard, but my voice still shook when I spoke. She really wrote that. She meant it. I felt the tears rise again, uncontrollable, but they were not the same tears I had cried before. These were heavier, hotter. Years and years of swallowed hurt rushing to the surface all at once. Lily pulled me into a hug and I broke. The sob tore from my chest in a way I did not expect. Not loud, not dramatic, just raw, exhausted. The grief of a child who had spent her entire life trying to earn something she never received. Acceptance, safety, love without conditions. I cried until my ribs ached, until my breathing came in uneven gasps. When I finally pulled away, Lily brushed my hair back from my face gently. You know what this means, right? She whispered. I nodded, slowly trembling. They're the ones who let go of you, not the other way around. The truth of it settled into the quiet of the room like a new weight I was not yet used to carrying. It hurt, but in a clean, honest way. Not the confusing ache of trying to fix what was never mine to repair. Later that night, after the tears dried and Lily made me eat something warm, I turned my phone back over and stared at the message again. We no longer consider you part of this family. For the first time, instead of feeling panic or desperation or guilt, I felt something close to peace, not relief exactly, but an opening, a space where something new could grow. I blocked my mother's number, then my father's new temporary number, then every relative who had attacked me. I pressed the final block button and exhaled. Lily smiled softly. Families like that break people. But you escaped. I leaned back against the couch, exhausted but strangely lighter. I did not lose a family that night. I lost an illusion. And in the empty space where their voices once echoed, I felt the faintest spark of something I had never truly felt before, the beginning of freedom. My first therapy session happened 3 days after my family disowned me, though disowned still felt like too formal a word for what really occurred. They had not disowned me. They had simply discarded me the way someone throws out an appliance that no longer works the way they want. Lily insisted on driving me, hovering protectively, until I assured her I could go inside alone. The counseling center sat in a quiet brick building lined with potted plants and a bench that looked too delicate to sit on. Inside, the air smelled faintly of peppermint and freshly brewed tea. Soft instrumental music drifted through the hall, and for a moment I wondered if I had stepped into a spa instead of a place meant to unravel the deepest wounds of my life. The therapist, Dr. Evelyn Ross, greeted me with a warm smile. She was in her early 50s with streaks of silver in her dark hair and eyes that made you feel seen without judgment or urgency. When she led me into her office, I noticed the room was intentionally comforting. Soft lighting, blankets folded neatly on a small couch, a woven rug, a shelf filled with small carved birds. Something inside me unclenched the moment I sat down. Dr. Ross sat across from me and crossed her legs. "Ava, I'm glad you're here." Her voice was steady, calm, grounded. I nodded, unsure how to respond. My throat felt tight. She began gently. "Tell me what brings you in today." I opened my mouth, but the words did not come out in full sentences. "My father, he hit me. My family, they turned on me. I was left outside. In the rain. I blacked out." She waited for me to continue. When I didn't, she leaned forward slightly. "That sounds terrifying." I swallowed hard, feeling my breath shake. "It was." She let silence settle for a moment, not rushing it, not filling it, just letting it breathe. Then she asked softly but intentionally, "Ava, is this the first time your father has hurt you physically?" I stared at the patterned rug under my feet, tracing the lines with my eyes. A small ache formed in my chest, an ache that recognized the truth before I did. "No," I whispered. She nodded as if she expected that answer. "Tell me about the first time you remember." Memories flickered behind my eyes like an old film reel. "I was 16. He slapped me because Noah lied and said I yelled at him." Dr. Ross's voice remained calm. "And has your family dismissed your pain before?" "Like this." Her question felt like a heavy key turning inside an old lock. "Always. They always told me to be quiet, that I was dramatic." She leaned back slightly. "And have you always taken care of them even when it hurt you?" My throat tightened painfully. "Yes." She inhaled deeply, then said the sentence that cracked open the floor beneath me. "Ava, you weren't loved. You were used." The words hit me so hard that my breath froze in my chest. I blinked rapidly, trying to steady myself, but the truth had already sunk beneath my ribs, lodging itself where decades of confusion had lived. I felt tears spill before I even realized I was crying. They fell silently warm against my bruised skin. Dr. Ross handed me a tissue box, but did not reach for me, did not crowd me. She let me feel whatever I needed to feel. After a long pause, she said, "I want you to understand something important. You learned as a child that love meant self-sacrifice, that love meant silence, that love meant taking care of others even when they hurt you. That is not love, Ava. That is conditioning." Something inside me cracked again. A painful, trembling exhale escaped my lips. She continued, "When you stopped following that script, your family punished you, not because you did anything wrong, but because your refusal threatened the system they built around your obedience. That system only works if you keep shrinking." I pressed the tissue against my eyes, trying to hold myself together as her words cut through every lie my family had ever taught me. Dr. Ross studied me with soft eyes. "Do you blame yourself for what happened?" My voice broke. "Yes. I feel like if I had just stayed quiet or let Noah keep the car or not confronted Dad, maybe none of this would have happened." She shook her head slowly. "That is trauma talking, not truth. The truth is this: they harmed you because that is who they are, not because of anything you did. You could have done everything perfectly, Ava, and they still would have found a reason to blame you. That is how toxic families maintain control, by making the most responsible member carry all the weight." More tears spilled. I felt small, but not the old kind of small, the powerless kind. This was different. This was the shrinking that comes before expansion, the breaking that comes before rebuilding. Dr. Ross let me gather myself before asking, "Do you want to build a life without their manipulation and abuse?" "Yes." The answer came immediately with clarity I didn't expect. I want to be free." She nodded with a small smile. "Good. Then healing begins with one truth. You owe them nothing. They chose anger. They chose denial. They chose violence. You chose survival. You chose honesty. You chose yourself. That makes you brave, Ava. Brave people feel afraid, but they act anyway." She handed me a small card with grounding exercises for panic symptoms. I stared at the printed words, breathing techniques, sensory grounding, emotional naming, and felt something shift inside me. A slow thawing. A beginning. When the session ended, I stood slowly feeling lighter but fragile, as if the truth had removed a weight, but also stripped away a layer of armor I had grown used to wearing. Before I left, Dr. Ross said one final thing. Healing is not about forgetting what happened. It's about reclaiming the parts of yourself they tried to break. You deserve a life where you are safe, where you are respected, where you are loved without conditions. You deserve peace, Ava. As I stepped out into the cool air of the parking lot, something inside me felt different. Not whole, not yet, but beginning. The emotional undulation of the last weeks had taken me from terror to heartbreak to clarity, and now finally quietly to hope. For the first time, I realized healing was not a destination. It was the decision to step away from harm and toward myself, and I had taken that step. Rebuilding my life did not arrive in one triumphant moment, but in a slow accumulation of small choices that felt both terrifying and empowering, like learning to walk again after years of crawling on uneven ground. The morning after my first therapy session, I woke up in Lily's guest room and stared at the ceiling for a long time, listening to the quiet hum of the heater and the faint sounds of traffic outside her window. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, maybe years, I did not feel the familiar dread pooling in my stomach the moment I opened my eyes. It felt strange, unfamiliar, almost suspicious. I took a slow breath, letting the air fill my lungs without bracing for the next blow, literal or emotional. That alone felt like progress. Later that day, I drove my Lexus for the first time since Noah's arrest. Sliding behind the wheel was unexpectedly emotional. My hands trembled slightly as I touched the leather steering wheel, remembering the empty parking lot, the panic, the lingering fear that something I worked so hard for could be taken from me without warning. But this time, I locked the doors, double-checked the steering wheel. Lock adjusted the dash camera I had installed and let the engine hum quietly beneath me. It felt like reclaiming a piece of myself they had tried to take. The trauma did not vanish, but it softened around the edges no longer sharp enough to cut. Over the next few weeks, I began shaping a life that belonged to me. First step, finding a place to live. Lily had been generous offering her spare room without hesitation, but I knew I needed my own space to rebuild fully. So I spent hours browsing rental listings, touring small apartments near the hospital, imagining what it would feel like to decorate my own space without anyone criticizing my choices or calling them frivolous. When I found a cozy one-bedroom apartment on the top floor of a renovated blue Victorian house close to work, I felt a spark of something bright inside my chest. The landlord, a kind woman named Sarah, walked me through the space with warm energy that reminded me of what support was supposed to feel like. Exposed brick walls, a small balcony overlooking a row of maple trees, a kitchen with more counter space than I expected. It was perfect, not because it was luxurious, but because it was mine. Signing the lease felt like severing the last invisible thread tying me to the house I grew up in, a house that had never felt like home. I moved in gradually, box by box, with Lily helping me carry the heavier things and refusing to let me even think about lifting the furniture alone. Each new item I placed in the apartment, a lamp, a soft blanket, a scented candle, a framed photo of me and Lily laughing at the coast, built a sense of belonging one tiny piece at a time. I decorated slowly, intentionally, choosing items that made me feel calm. For the first time, my space did not have to accommodate anyone's temper, anyone's expectations, anyone's chaos. Just me. My Lexus now sat in a designated spot behind the house where I put up a small security camera. Every evening, I locked it with a quiet sense of gratitude, knowing it was safe under my watch, not stolen under someone else's entitlement. Work was different, too. After the court hearings, my coworkers seemed even more protective, checking in gently during breaks or offering help without making me feel helpless. Dr. Kaplan stopped me in the hallway one afternoon after a difficult shift and said, "Ava, I see a different strength in you now." Painful growth, but growth nonetheless. His words lingered in my mind for days. My supervisor also called me into her office to discuss the promotion I had applied for months earlier. We spoke about my work ethic, my reliability, my commitment to the patients. When she offered me the position officially, nurse practitioner team lead, I felt a trembling warmth spread through me. Me, the girl who had been told she was not smart enough, not strong enough, not valuable enough, now stepping into a leadership role. On the drive home that evening, I cried quietly in my car, not because of sadness, but because of the stark contrast between the life I used to live and the one I was now building. A life where my achievements were recognized instead of resented. A life where I wasn't made to feel guilty for succeeding. A life where my value was not negotiable. Rebuilding also meant practicing boundaries, something that still felt foreign and unnatural. When my grandmother called from an unknown number, clearly hoping to bypass the block, I let it go to voicemail. When she left a message begging me to think of the family and fix the damage, I deleted it without listening to the end. My therapist reminded me every week, "Ava, protecting yourself is not cruelty. It is necessity." Slowly, I began to believe her. The internal undulation between fear and strength, grief and empowerment, regret and clarity became less violent. Still present, but more navigable. One evening, after unpacking the last box in my apartment, I stepped onto the little balcony and inhaled the crisp evening air. The streetlight illuminated the tops of the maple trees, their branches swaying gently. For the first time in a long time, I felt something that startled me with its simplicity. Peace. Real peace. Not the fragile kind that shatters the moment someone raises their voice. Not the temporary kind that exists only when you're small enough not to make waves. This was the peace of knowing I had stepped out of a life that was killing me and into one I was finally allowed to build. Piece by piece, day by day. Pain still lived inside me, but hope lived there too. And hope was growing stronger. The letter arrived on a Thursday afternoon, tucked among grocery flyers and insurance ads in the small metal mailbox outside my new apartment. I wasn't expecting anything personal. No one in my former family had my new address except for the people I trusted, and none of them were named Noah. The envelope was plain handwritten, my name tilted slightly to the right the way he always wrote as a kid. The moment my eyes recognized the handwriting, something cold rippled down my spine. I stood frozen on the front steps, feeling the cool autumn air brush against my skin as memories flickered through my mind. Noah laughing as he blamed me for something he broke. Noah rolling his eyes while our parents scolded me. Noah smirking as he drove my Lexus like it was his birthright. My fingers tightened around the envelope. For a moment, I considered dropping it straight into the recycling bin. Let the past stay buried. Let him remain part of the life I had walked away from. But curiosity mixed with the kind of emotional muscle memory my therapist warned me about pulled me inside. I sat on the couch, the muted afternoon light spilling through the windows, and slowly opened the envelope. A single-lined sheet was folded neatly inside. His handwriting wavered uneven, pressed harder in some places, like he was pushing through something. "Ava, I do not know if you will read this or burn it. Maybe you already hate me. Maybe you should. I deserve that." That opening line hit me harder than I expected. I sank deeper into the couch, bracing myself. I am writing this because the last few months have been different. Being on probation means mandatory sessions with a counselor. At first, I thought it was stupid, just another hoop to jump through. But then he said something that broke something open in me. He said I behaved the way I did because I was raised to believe my needs mattered more than anyone else's, that I was taught to see your sacrifices as obligations, not kindness. I stopped breathing for a moment. The words felt too honest, too unfiltered. Noah continued, "I thought about that for a long time, about how many times you were punished because of me, how many times you fixed my mistakes so Mom wouldn't cry, how many times you gave up things you needed so they would stay calm. And I realized I became the monster Dad wanted me to be. I felt a jolt in my chest, sharp and unexpected, like hearing thunder on a clear day. I didn't know if it was sadness or anger. Maybe both. Maybe something else entirely. The letter went on. When I took your car, I told myself it was fine, that you would forgive me because you always did, that you would fix everything again. That was the role you always played. But when the cops pulled me over and I saw the word stolen on their dashboard, something cracked. Not fear of jail, not fear of consequences. It was the first time in my life I thought, this is going to hurt Ava. And for the first time, I cared. I ran a shaky hand through my hair, the paper trembling slightly in my grip. Noah had never written anything like this before. He continued, "The night I was processed in the county jail, I kept thinking about you lying on the driveway. I didn't want to think about it, but I couldn't stop. I imagined you alone in the rain, bleeding, dizzy, calling for help, and knowing Dad wouldn't come for you the way he always came for me. I felt that familiar ache begin to bloom in my chest again, grief heavy and suffocating. Grief for what could have been, grief for what never was, grief for who Noah might have become in a different family. I understand if you don't want me in your life, and I don't blame you. I don't blame you for the court hearing. I don't blame you for the charges, for the truth. I blame myself. I keep hearing your voice in the judge's chamber saying you wanted me to face consequences. You were right. I needed them. And now something else is happening. I want to be better, not for Mom, not for Dad, not because they want someone they can brag about. I want to be better because I saw what I became. And I don't want to be that man anymore." My throat tightened as I read the last lines. "I am not asking for forgiveness. I am not asking you to write back or visit or pretend we can go back to how things were. I just want you to know that I see it now. All of it. Every way I hurt you. Every time I used you. Every time I let them hurt you and stayed quiet. I don't know who I am without them, but I think you found who you are without any of us. And I hope, someday, I can become someone you are not ashamed to know. Noah." A long silence filled the apartment as I lowered the letter onto my lap. My heartbeat pulsed softly beneath the fading bruise at my temple. I felt emotions swirling, overlapping, contradicting, crashing into one another. Sadness, anger, compassion, grief, a tenderness I did not want to feel, a distance I desperately needed. And beneath all of it, a strange, quiet hope, not for reconciliation, not for rebuilding the old broken things, but for something gentler, something distant, something not for me, but for him. Growth, change, accountability. I didn't know if I would ever respond. I didn't know if I could. But for the first time, Noah's words did not feel like manipulation. They felt like truth, imperfect, painful, unpolished, but real. I folded the letter slowly and placed it in a small drawer of my bedside table, not as a promise, but as a marker. Proof that even in the ruins of a broken family, something honest could survive. Not repair, not redemption, just honesty. And sometimes honesty is the first step towards something better. News of my father's downward spiral reached me slowly, piece by piece, drifting in from neighbors, co-workers, and eventually even from social media, where people whispered about what happened to Frank Morgan with the same tone they once used to praise him for his volunteer work or his long career at the lumber company. It began with the neighborhood association removing him from their volunteer coordinator position. He had held that role for nearly a decade, organizing cleanups and holiday events with a pride that bordered on obsession. But after his arrest for assault, parents complained about him being around their kids, and someone leaked the police report to the committee. The email was terse and formal, but the message was clear: he was no longer welcome. According to a mutual neighbor, he had smashed a recycling bin against the side of the house after reading the email. The sound apparently echoed throughout the block. I felt no satisfaction hearing it, just a kind of heavy inevitability, as if the consequences he'd outrun his entire life had finally caught up to him, breathless and unyielding. The next month brought more fallout. Word spread at his former job that he had a pending assault charge and the company rescinded his application to return. A close friend of his, someone who had fished with him every summer for 20 years, reportedly stopped answering his calls after hearing about the incident. I imagined my father pacing the kitchen, rage simmering in that same clenched jaw I had seen during the court hearing. He was a man who relied on image, reputation, power, control. Now all of it was slipping away. One afternoon, Lily sent me a screenshot from Facebook. A community Facebook group had posted, "We regret to announce that due to recent events, Frank Morgan will no longer serve as head of the annual charity fundraiser." Comments poured in beneath it, some shocked, others unsurprised, a few people vaguely referencing a violent incident. I stared at the screenshot for a long time, debating whether the discomfort twisting in my stomach was guilt or something deeper. Dr. Ross's voice drifted into my mind. "You are not responsible for the consequences of someone else's choices." It grounded me. Still, the emotional undulation was sharp that day. Anger rising, sadness falling, justice lifting, grief returning. But the next ripple of consequence arrived in a way that shocked even me. A week later, my grandmother called from another unknown number. I nearly ignored it, but something tugged at me. Maybe leftover instinct, maybe compassion. When I answered, her voice sounded small, brittle. "Ava, your father was removed from his church role." I blinked, taken aback. He loved that church. It was one of the few places where he could play the role of the good father, the strong community man. "What happened?" I asked quietly. She hesitated. "They found out about the assault. The pastor said he couldn't be in leadership with a violent record." She exhaled shakily. "He's furious. He says, 'This is all your fault.'" The words landed like dull stones, not sharp enough to wound, but heavy enough to remind me why I had walked away. I took a steady breath. "Grandma, he did this to himself." She sniffed. "I know, dear. I know, but he's unraveling. He keeps shouting that you destroyed his life." The familiar guilt tried to claw its way up my throat, but it hit a wall, reinforced by weeks of therapy, truth, and clarity. "The life he built was already cracked," I murmured. "I didn't break it. I just stopped holding it together." She grew quiet, and I sensed she understood. Later that evening, Lily found me sitting on my balcony watching the leaves rustle in the autumn wind. She placed a cup of chamomile tea beside me and sat down. "Another update about your dad?" she asked softly. I nodded. "He's losing everything. His positions, his friends, his reputation." Lily exhaled long and slow. "Actions have consequences, Ava. You finally let his fall be his own." I nodded but didn't speak. Watching him unravel from a distance felt surreal. This was the man I had feared my entire life. The man whose voice could silence me instantly, whose footsteps in the hallway could make my heart pound. And now he was being forced to face himself without me absorbing the damage. The next consequence arrived like a final echo. A neighbor emailed me, one of the few who had supported me quietly through all of this. She wrote, "Ava, I thought you should know. There was a community mediation meeting at the rec center today. Your father tried to speak, but people confronted him. They said they didn't want violence around their families." He stormed out. I read the message twice. Then again. I imagined the scene vividly, his red face, his clenched fists, the muttered curses, the indignation. I could see him shoving open the doors, convinced the entire world had betrayed him. But the truth was simpler. The world had finally stopped shielding him from himself. That weekend, my therapist asked me gently, "How do you feel about everything happening with your father?" I stared at the ceiling for a long moment before answering. "I feel sad and relieved and guilty for feeling relieved." She nodded. "That's normal. Emotional conflict is part of healing. You are grieving the father you needed, not the father you had." A tear slid down my cheek, quiet and warm. I wiped it away. "I don't think he'll ever change." She looked at me steadily. "Maybe not. But it's no longer your responsibility to manage who he is. You're allowed to release that burden." That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about the phrase, "final consequences," not as punishment, but as reality. Frank Morgan was not suffering because I stood up for myself. He was suffering because accountability had finally replaced avoidance. And the most profound consequence of all was this: his power over me was gone, completely, irreversibly. When I fell asleep, it was the first night I didn't dream of his fist, his voice, or his anger. I dreamed instead of driving down a quiet road with the windows cracked open and the radio playing softly, my Lexus, my hands steady on the wheel, my life finally moving forward without the weight of his shadow behind me. Finding peace did not come in a single moment of triumph, but in layers as gentle and gradual as morning light moving across a room. It began with small things, subtle shifts in the way I lived, breathed, and occupied space. One morning, I woke up and realized I had slept through the night without jolting awake from a nightmare. Another evening, I drove home from work and noticed that my hands no longer gripped the steering wheel with tension, as if expecting someone to take the car from me again. These tiny markers of healing accumulated quietly until I could finally feel the difference between surviving and living. The first real wave of peace hit me on a crisp Sunday morning. I decided to take a drive along the Oregon coast, something I had always wanted to do, but never allowed myself for fear of guilt or being needed by my family. The sky was pale blue, streaked with long wisps of white cloud, and the air smelled faintly of salt, even before I reached the shoreline. With the windows down and the soft hum of my Lexus blending with the distant rush of wind, I felt something loosen inside me, something that had been tight for decades. Cannon Beach came into view, and the sight of the towering haystack rock against the morning tide made my breath hitch. I parked the car and stepped out onto the sand, cool grains shifting beneath my shoes. The ocean stretched endlessly in front of me, vast and unbothered by the weight of human pain. For the first time in my adult life, I didn't feel small in a suffocating way. I felt small in a freeing way, part of something bigger, something expansive, something untouched by the violence and control that had shaped so much of my past. I walked along the shoreline with the waves licking at my feet, the wind tugging gently at my hair. Each step felt like reclaiming ground I had been denied. I found a dry patch of sand, sat down, hugged my knees, and let the roar of the ocean fill every corner of my mind. No voices telling me I owed them more. No guilt, no fear. Just breath, just being, just me. Later that week, peace found me again during a meeting at work. My supervisor had scheduled a performance review now that I was officially in my new leadership role. She spoke at length about my professionalism, empathy, and leadership potential. Hearing her list qualities that had once been dismissed or criticized by my parents, too emotional, too ambitious, too independent, made my chest warm with a quiet, steady pride. And when she announced a raise, I hadn't expected tears pricked the corners of my eyes. Not because of the money, but because someone finally acknowledged my worth without trying to diminish it. Another layer of peace arrived one night when I returned home to my apartment and realized I did not dread opening the door. My space greeted me with soft lamplight, the faint scent of vanilla from a candle I had left burning earlier, and the warm hum of my heater. On the coffee table sat a new book I had been meaning to read, not because anyone told me I should, but because it was mine. My choice. My joy. I curled up on the couch with a blanket wrapped around me, sipping tea, feeling the simple luxury of safety. A safety I had created. Over time, I started exploring hobbies I never had the freedom to pursue. I joined a hiking group of local nurses, all women with stories of their own divorces, losses, triumphs, breakthroughs. They welcomed me in with laughter and camaraderie. On my first hike with them, as we climbed through the mossy trails of Forest Park, I laughed so hard at one of their jokes that my stomach hurt. I realized then how rare it had been for me to laugh like that around my family, the kind of laughter that wasn't monitored or scolded or taken away. One evening, after returning from a long hike, I stood in my kitchen making dinner. The quiet around me felt warm instead of lonely. The sizzle of vegetables on the stove, the gentle flicker of the candle on the counter, the distant hum of my apartment neighbors, it all felt like a kind of symphony. My life had room for sound now. Room for calm, room for me. Peace also appeared in unexpected moments, like when my therapist asked, "What would you say to the younger version of yourself who thought she had to earn love?" Without thinking, I whispered, "You're safe now." I hadn't realized how badly I needed to hear myself say those words. Another moment came while cleaning out an old box of belongings. I found photo albums from childhood images of birthdays where Noah blew out candles while I hovered in the background, blurry and half hidden. I didn't cry. I didn't ache. I simply closed the album with a quiet acceptance. That girl was gone, and the woman she became no longer lived in the shadows. One afternoon, I received a voicemail from my grandmother. She didn't mention reconciliation or guilt or pleas to return. She simply said, "I hope you're doing well. I've been thinking about you." It didn't stir panic or longing, just a gentle wish that she could heal in her own way, too. The biggest sign of peace came one Saturday morning when I spontaneously decided to trade my old Lexus for a newer model. Not because I needed to replace bad memories, not this time, but because I wanted something that symbolized the new life I had built. As I sat in the dealership signing the final papers, I felt a quiet sense of ownership, not just of the car, but of my entire existence. When I drove it home and parked it carefully in my designated spot, the sun dipped below the tree line, casting a warm, golden glow across the lot. I stood there for a long moment, breathing in the cool air, watching the light shift and settle. Peace wasn't a single moment. It wasn't a destination. It wasn't something I found at the end of a court hearing or after leaving my family behind. Peace was a collection of small choices, choosing safety, choosing truth, choosing myself every day. As I stood there in the fading light, I whispered a quiet truth that felt like a promise. Leaving them was not the end of my story. It was the beginning. And for the first time, the beginning belonged entirely to me. When I look back at everything, the driveway rainwater mixing with my blood, the echo of my father's fist, the silence of a family that chose convenience over love, the courtroom lights, the healing, the rebuilding, I realized something profound, something I was not prepared for when all of this began. I did not just leave a toxic home. I did not just escape a dangerous pattern. I walked into a life that finally had room for me, a life where I did not need to shrink, a life where I did not need to apologize for existing, a life where healing was allowed to take up space. And maybe you, the person hearing this story, know exactly what I mean. Maybe you know too well what a slammed door sounds like when it is followed by silence. Maybe you know the feeling of trying to earn love from people who only wanted obedience. Maybe you know the pain of sacrificing your safety so someone else can keep their comfort. If you do, then hear me when I say this. You are not alone. You are not dramatic. You are not overreacting. You are not ungrateful. You are not the problem. You are simply someone who learned to survive in a place that never learned how to love you properly. I used to think family was defined by blood, that DNA meant devotion, that parents were automatically protectors, that siblings were inherently safe. But the truth, the hard, liberating, painful truth, is that DNA only makes people related. It does not make them kind. It does not make them loyal. It does not make them deserving of you. Healing taught me that real family is chosen every day through actions, through respect, through honesty, through safety. Real family is the friend who pulled me out of the rain, the coworker who placed tea in my shaking hands, the doctor who looked me in the eye and said I survived a home, not grew up in one, the therapist who told me I was not loved, I was used, and said it with compassion instead of cruelty. Real family is anyone who sees you, not anyone who owns you. And if you have lived through something like this, if you have survived the kind of environment that demanded your silence and your sacrifice, then listen carefully. You have the right to walk away. You have the right to heal. You have the right to choose peace. You have the right to say enough. You have the right to protect yourself. You have the right to build a life where you are safe in your own skin. You have the right to redefine what family means. People will say you are cruel for leaving. They will say you are ungrateful. They will say you broke the family. But you did not break the family. You simply stopped breaking yourself to keep the family comfortable, and that is not cruelty. That is courage. Healing does not look like a straight line. It does not feel clean or easy. Some days I woke up with pride in my chest. Some days I curled into a ball and cried until the sun went down. Some days I felt strong. Others I felt hollow. Healing is not a doorway you walk through once. It is a practice. a decision you make every morning, a whisper that says, I deserve better even on days you barely believe it. But one day, you will wake up and realize you are breathing differently. Your body is resting without bracing. Your mind is moving without fear. Your heart is beating without apology. That is peace. That is what you fought for. That is what you deserve. And if you have ever been told to stay quiet about what you suffered, I want you to know something. Telling your story is not betrayal. Telling your story is reclaiming your life, because every time you speak your truth, someone else out there feels a little less alone. Someone else whispers, maybe I can leave too. Someone else learns that survival is not shameful, it is powerful, it is brave. And so, if you are listening to me right now, wherever you are on your couch, in your car, sitting alone in a quiet room you are trying to make feel like home, I want to ask you something, not as a narrator, not as a storyteller, as someone who finally found peace after years of confusion and hurt. Where are you watching from, and what have you survived? I read every comment, not out of curiosity, but out of solidarity. Your stories matter to me. Your voices matter. Your pain matters. Your healing matters. And maybe, just maybe, your story is the beginning of someone else's courage. So tell me what you overcame. Tell me what you rebuilt. Tell me what peace looks like for you. Tell me what you learned when you finally stepped out of the shadows others kept you in. Because if there is one thing I believe now with my whole heart, it is this: family is not who you are born to. Family is who is safe to love. And you, after everything you have lived through, you deserve a life full of people who choose you, not people who use you. I am here. I am listening. And I am grateful you made it this far. Your story matters. Your voice matters. And you deserve peace too.